حي على الفلاح.
The people of Thamud, of whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent His slave Saleh alayhi salam. The people of Thamud, they were Arabs and they lived actually near to Tabuk, and in that area is in the area where Thamud used to live. And that area till today is called and known as Mada'in Saleh, meaning the dwellings of Saleh. And so the people of Thamud, their skill was that they would build homes into the mountain. If you go back to the beginning of all these stories, the message that perhaps gets lost as we're explaining it is the secret to their salvation. It's a secret to how they could have prospered, how they could have became such an amazing nation. And what did the people of Thamud do wrong? They worshipped other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so what they did is they attributed all these gifts of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to their idols.
The type of idol that the people of Thamud were following weren't only statues. They did follow statues, subhanallah, but they had an associate idol, and that was themselves. They governed what happens and they governed what doesn't happen. They governed what's right and they governed what's wrong. And they made themselves gods. As for the belief of statues, was just something symbolic, something, an identity to hold on. What they really cared about was their advanced technology as well. They were even more advanced in their technology than their former cousins Ad. They built, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions them in the Quran, and relate the story or the mention of Thamud, who used to bring the huge rocks and stones from beneath deep valleys. In another verse of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "And you, O people of Thamud," is referring to, "you carved into mountains homes and palaces." And they would carve with their tools rooms and corridors and buildings and stories and beautiful features inside of rocky mountains. And they allowed air and light to come in spontaneously and also in an orderly fashion. How did they bring huge stones the size of hills from beneath valleys? And how did they actually carve into mountains palaces that they lived in, allowing light to penetrate and air to penetrate everything? This was their advanced technology. Till today, it is a wonder of the world.
Their construction of these castles is so strong that till today, you can go to Petra, you can go to Mada'in Saleh, and it's still there. You're talking about, Allahu A'lam, how long it was, maybe, at least 2,000 years. It's still there, these structures. But when it came to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they were the most ignorant of creation. Saleh alayhi salam came to these people, told them to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, told them to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's blessings upon them, which, as we said, is a critical point of the da'wah of all messengers. And so Saleh alayhi salam would call them to Allah azza wa jalla and argue with them and debate with them, meaning that Saleh alayhi salam was very wise, was very strong, was very handsome. He's from their people, Akhuhum Saleh, right? Their brother Saleh. And they had high hopes for Saleh alayhi salam, meaning that he would have got a very high government position. He would be working for the government, lots of benefits, permanent job, all of that. He would have got a really good status. And they were saying, what a pity that you had to say this. Because, you had a great career. Because now, everybody's going to say that you're crazy. Are you forbidding us from worshiping that which our fathers worship? And so they became fed up.
Okay, Saleh, then bring to us a sign. We want a miracle. You call yourself a prophet, we want a miracle. But now they were being sarcastic. They were being silly. So what did the leaders come and say? Childishly, they said, "We want a miracle from you, show us." So Saleh turned back to them and said, "Okay, good. You want a miracle and a sign? I will give you a miracle and a sign from my Lord if He wills. I am but a messenger from God." So then Saleh turned around and said to them, my Lord says, anything you choose, and I will do it for you bi'idhnillah, with the power of Allah. They said, we'll decide. He said, you decide. They said, anything. He said, you name it and it will happen. You choose. So they said, they gathered each other, the mala', the leaders of them who were full of arrogance and proudness and haughtiness. They said to him, one of them said, okay, we want you to produce to us a fully grown she-camel. It can't be born from any other camel. And it can't be a baby that's growing. It has to be right there and then a full-grown she-camel. Pop up like that. They laughed. Then a second person said, oh, I have one too. This same she-camel that has to pop up from nowhere has to be the hugest she-camel we have ever laid eyes on in our life. A third person said, in fact, it has to, how about this one? It has to be so big that there is a well that we share, that we drink from in the city. It has to be so big that it would need to drink from this whole one well, so that no more water is left in the well for the whole city to drink in one day. Then a fourth person said, I have a good one. This same she-camel has to come out from that rock over there. They all laughed and they started to talk among each other. Then Saleh came back to them and said, if I did this, will you then believe? They looked at each other and said, of course we will, sarcastically. They went back home calling him a crazy man, a lunatic, a silly man. A few weeks, months went by. And this is the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala works with the people who go against him. And one day Saleh had made an appointment for them and said to them, come and meet me near the rock that you chose. And bi'idhnillah, with the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, before their eyes, the earth rumbled and the big stone or the big hill cracked open, and out of it walked the largest she-camel they have ever seen, and was pregnant with another camel almost about to give birth. When they saw this before their eyes, the Messenger alayhi salam, Saleh, said to them, this is the she-camel of Allah. It doesn't belong to anyone. It's not born from any other camel. It's Allah's camel, as a miracle, as a sign, as you have asked. You have to now leave it. God has made a condition. You're not allowed to harm it, you're not allowed to touch it, and you have to leave it to graze wherever it wants.
And so some of the people believed in Saleh. The Quran does mention that there were people from the people of Thamud who did believe in Saleh alayhi salam. But the majority of them, they disbelieved in Saleh even though the camel had been brought. And so the condition was that the camel was not to be harmed in any way, and that the camel would drink one day from the water and they would drink the other day. This is such an enormous camel and such a sign from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It would drink the water of the entire people of Thamud, and it had its whole day for drinking. And the day when they weren't drinking from the water, they were actually drinking from the milk of this camel, enough milk to give to the entire tribe of Thamud. And how many people are we speaking about? This is the tribe of Thamud, and this is Naqatullah. It was pregnant, and it gave birth. It's baby she-camel. Now, Saleh alayhi salam made a promise with the people of Thamud. He said that Allah is bringing the sign, and do not touch it with any harm. And they made the promise.
The chiefs of those who behaved arrogantly among his people said, to those who were considered weak from those who believed, do you believe that Saleh is sent by the Lord? They said, indeed, we believe in the messenger with which he has been sent. Those who were haughty said, we certainly disbelieve in what you believe. So they slew the she-camel and insolently defied their Lord's command and challenged Saleh, saying, bring us that which you threaten us with if you are a messenger. It says that a group of young men who were troublemakers, they got together in secret with the chiefs of the city. And they said in secret when Saleh was away, they said, we're going to go in the night because this she-camel has caused us problems. What is this? Everyone's now believing in what Saleh has come with. Get rid of it. We can't lose what we have of pride and power. Secondly, what's this? It drinks from the whole well. We have to wait till the next day. Get rid of it. And thirdly, this is a lot of meat. It can serve the whole city. Get rid of it.
The worst of them, his name was Qidar ibn Salih. These 9 people, they did this. One of them, actually, Qidar ibn Salih was the one who started it. They first cut off the tendons. Once they started in the cutting and the spearing and the arrowing of the camel, it cried out. And the whole land was shaking from her cry. She was crying for her child, to warn her child of what they were doing. And as the books of Tariq and Tafsir, they'll say that this fasil, the baby camel, it climbed up and ran away, and it climbed up to the top of the mountain, and it cried out itself. It cried out 3 times. Saleh alayhi salam said to his people, he said, enjoy yourselves in your places, in your dwellings, 3 days. That this is a promise that has no lie in it. And Saleh alayhi salam, the people who believed in Saleh, they left. And now they had 3 days. And so they started partying. And they were mocking and ridiculing. And so on the first day, their faces became yellow. And they would say, oh, the first day has passed. And they're like, oh, no punishment has come. The second day, their faces became red. And they said, oh, the punishment is coming. It's day 2, ha 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 ha. And then day 3 came and their faces turned black. And they said, it's day 3, where's the punishment of Allah? Where's the punishment? And they're laughing and they're mocking. So much so that they went to an exaggeration in their mocking, that they started wearing their kafan in mockery. Like it was like a party, like Halloween or something like this. That they're dressing up like the dead. And they said it's the 3rd day. And then at that 3rd day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down His punishment. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَدَمْدَمَ عَلَيْهِمْ رَبُّهُمْ بِذَنْبِهِمْ فَسَوَّاهَا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كَذَّبَتْ ثَمُودُ وَعَادٌ بِالْقَارِعَةِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that Thamud and Ad, they disbelieved and they claimed that it was a lie. When you say disbelieve, they're saying that the Qari'ah, the day of judgment, this shaking, the quake that's going to lead to the day of resurrection, they disbelieved in it. Meaning they said that it was a lie. It's not happening. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and so as for the people of Thamud, they were destroyed, annihilated, bit-taghiyah. This is actually interesting. Taghiyah and Qari'ah. The translation of the first one is, they disbelieved in the stunning calamity. In many verses of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the day of resurrection happening with Al-Qari'ah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that when that Qari'ah happens, you know how they say that the mountains will be turned into stone? The mountains will not crumble to the sea when the Qari'ah happens. You know what will happen to the mountains? They will be turned into dust. It's nothing, like a feather. That's what the Qari'ah is going to do to the mountains. And now because Thamud disbelieved in the Qari'ah, they said it was a lie, it's not happening, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroyed them with a-taghiyah. And the translation is actually interesting. It says storm and lightning and so on and so forth. But that's not necessarily what a-taghiyah says. Some of the scholars actually in fact have mentioned, and this is something that you realize later because at that time you couldn't understand what it is, the power of sound waves and its ability to destroy. And you're talking a destruction that happens like instantaneously. They thought that they would live forever. They were obviously wrong. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroyed them, He wiped them out as if they never lived there. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroyed them.
Allah says, and the people of Al-Hijr disbelieved the messengers, and we gave them our signs, but they turned away from them. They were hewing houses from the mountains, dwelling therein deemed security. So the thunderous cry seized them in the morning, and what they achieved proved no avail for them. As-sayha, Allah sent Jibreel alayhi salam, and he screamed, and they died.